This meeting is being recorded. Welcome all again to my paranormal closet where the stories and magic take place. We are going to resume our discussion, part 2 of an encounter that Joe Moon had with Bigfoot, and his brother definitely wrote a book in relation to the story, not exactly the real story, but it's based on the Bigfoot sighting. So if we could get back to that discussion, I know we were talking about how we felt that there were Bigfoot that traveled in family units. And I think the last thing that we said was that there was a sighting of a female and 2 young Bigfoot.
Yeah, just 2 young ones walking down a truck up over here in the Olympics mountains. I remember, the guy told me the story, and that just kind of goes along with, yeah, you were saying something about the young ones too. So I mean, there's young ones.
There's a couple of groups up here, and he's seen footprints of both adults and younger ones. And then I have 2 personal friends that have had their own experiences. One, he wrote his own book, just like Tim wrote, but his was based on the true account that he had with his family. Actually, his name is Andre. And another is a woman that I know, but when I wrote her story in the book, she asked me to change her name because she didn't want anyone to think she was crazy, that she had this thing happen to her. So
Yeah.
you got both sides of the spectrum, people that don't care what anyone says. I'm just going to tell you, if you think I'm crazy, I don't care. And the others that want to tell their story, but are afraid for, the ridicule or the backlash that they might get from telling their story.
Well,
I always wondered why
I didn't tell the story for a long time. I didn't tell my story for a long time. I'll tell you that.
I think that's probably mostly what happened to me. Even with Andre, the same thing with him. He experienced it as a child, but didn't start talking about it until he got older. But ironically enough, Joe, he is also sensitive to spirit. So it's just very strange how people who have experiences such as this have that sensitivity. And I always wondered why no one could ever get like a good camera shot of one, until Andre got a great one when he pulled over to the side of the road. He and his wife and 2 daughters were driving in the car, and his wife sees this thing running in a field on a pretty desolate road. It's at night, it's desolate. There's really nothing on it. During the day, there are cars here and there, but not much. And she sees it running in the field, and she says, Andre, you got to pull over. I see a Bigfoot running in the field. And he's like, what? And she's like, yeah. So they pull over, and the 4 of them, he and his 2 daughters and wife, get out, and they're standing on the side of the road watching this thing run across the field. And he takes out the camera and he snaps away pictures. The odd thing about it is he said that no one else stopped to look or take a picture. It was as if no one even noticed. So strange,
wow.
don't you think? I know modern technology and phones being in everybody's faces, but when I'm in the passenger seat, especially if I'm on a country road where I can see the beauty of the area around me, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to watch and look in the woods and observe. And that's different from me just being on a highway stretch. You know what I'm saying? So I was really astonished when he said, we were amazed standing there, like, we're watching this thing in the field and nobody else sees it and pulls over to the side of the road to check it out with us, which I thought was strange. But he's also felt that this Bigfoot thing that he had on his property as a child tracks him, because he's had more than one encounter with it. He had he's seen different pieces of information that have led him to believe that it's on his property now. But he's also had a camping trip where they were in their camper, and the camper was taken by whatever force and rocked with them in it. And
well, that has to be scary.
I can imagine, right? Well, he's terrified of it. Like, you went and got your shotgun. He wants nothing to do with it, whereas other people have different views on it. But he's very fearful of it, especially after this recent encounter, which happened, I think, like a year ago, where they were camping, and yeah, he feared for his children. He has two young daughters, and they all experienced this together. And I've
As
heard
he
that
should.
In Search of years ago when we were kids. Remember In Search of with Leonard
Yes,
Nimoy? They
yes.
had Bigfoot, and I remember them talking about a case about a family who was camping and their camper got rocked like that. And they're known for throwing rocks and knocking down trees and doing the
Yeah,
knocking sound and the scream. So I'm sure if you've been doing your research, you've heard all about this stuff
yeah.
too.
That's what they do. They do that. We were camping down by the Skokomish River, and it was still in the day and stuff. It was like the last day we were going to stay, and some big huge, it just kaboosh. You know how a big rock goes into the river, it just kaboom. I mean, it was so loud. It must have been a huge rock. And we just we just said, we're out of here. We packed up our stuff and left.
I mean, we
But
randomly can't pick up these big boulders and throw them like they're a
yeah,
football. Things
yeah,
can.
you can't do that. So we did pack up and leave on that one.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Well,
Now,
yeah,
Tim,
I'm scared of them.
what's the name of your book?
It's Tomato Fields, and it's thing Joe. There's in the 70s. It's written in the 70s before even anybody knew about Bigfoot. It never even mentions the word Bigfoot in the whole book. It is they used to dump sewage down there just up behind Joe's house, and that sewage year after year after year resulted in a lot of vegetation growing, and there was a lot of tomatoes. So Joe referred to it as the tomato fields, and that's where a lot of animals ate, and so the whole thing revolves around that area, and we called it the tomato fields because Joe thought that was a good name for the area, and it's a little bit mysterious. So
Well,
that's
there's a certain time of year when the tomatoes grow. You know, they grow big, and
They just randomly come back every year without anybody replanting anything, huh?
well, yes. I mean, it's sewage, you know, so it's human waste. So the seeds just go right through you. But anyway, there's a huge, huge field. Me and Tim went up there and
now
investigated it.
the
And
field now is just grass because they stopped dumping sewage because of
right,
environmental reasons quite a while ago. Now they have a plant that does everything. So it's just a large field of grass, acres and acres of grass. But at one point it was a bunch of wild growing vegetables. So that's kind of how we took it, and I took it from there and just developed the characters and
It sounds like it's a good one. And if this is the place where you had your encounter, it would make sense why it would go to this field of vegetables.
yeah,
yes,
that's the idea. So, and they probably do eat a lot of vegetables in addition to deer and other things. So,
And where can the public find your book?
just look up tomato fields. You can use my name if you want, Tim Moon, and tomato fields. It'll come right up on Amazon. It's solely on Amazon right now. Eventually I'll go a little wider and do it some other places as well. But
I don't
right
think
now,
you'll have to. I'm telling
yeah.
you, I think Amazon is the way to go. It's where everybody goes.
Well, that's why I started there. So
Yeah.
anyway, it's easy to get. You can get it in Kindle, you can get it in paperback, or you can do Kindle University if you're signed up to do that with Kindle, and it'll come up right away. So I think you'll like it if you're interested in this type of topic. It's kind of a thriller adventure. It's a little bit like Jaws in the forest.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
so that's
Are
the
you
idea.
gonna stay in this genre when you're writing? Are you gonna kind of take mystical creatures?
Yeah, I would like to. I'd like to expand on it. I'm looking into another one now with a series, making this a series. So, and I also will probably do some nonfiction stuff too on mystical issues. So
Well, that's what happened to me.
yeah,
Same
but-
thing happened. I was writing my second psychological thriller and I was in the middle of writing that and I was at a writing group and everybody just was tossing ideas around. And then the whole idea of haunting books came because I love to buy true ghost stories when I'm traveling.
I love
And
reading that stuff.
I do too. And my favorite place in New Jersey where I live is Cape May, New Jersey. When we visit the shore, I go to Cape May. It's like stepping back in time. And they always have the latest book on the hauntings in the area. And I would always pick it up. And I said to myself, well, I used to own a haunted antique shop in Sussex. So I know this area is haunted. And I kind of put it out on social media to put feelers out and see if anybody responded. And I got such an overwhelming response to people wanting to talk about their ghost stories. And obviously then it was the Bigfoot and the UFO stories too. So that's how it started. So I've gone on this tangent and I'm still working on that psychological thriller, but it's slow moving because everybody wants more of the true ghost stories. They want more of those books.
Yep.
So I'm going with what they're looking for. And I mean, it's led to a whole new journey for me. So you'll
Yeah.
find that that'll probably end up being for you too. You might go on a Bigfoot expedition before you know it.
Well, actually, there's guys that have offered to take me out here in places in Texas where people don't want to go. So
See?
I'm probably going to go, and so this might be the last time you hear from me.
You better take your gun, Tim.
Yeah, I'll take so.
Take your gun.
So, but anyway, there is some places in Texas where it's scary. So, but I was going to say something when you were talking about ghosts. Oh yeah, we got to talk about ghosts because Joe has a great ghost story. So I was going to.
Yeah, you were talking about the home that you grew up in being haunted. That's what happened with me. I was a kid.
Yeah.
And my mom used to watch In Search of and buy all of the magazines and stuff, but we never really talked about that sort of thing. And in my family, there's only one other person that I know that had their own experiences seeing ghosts. So it wasn't like it ran in the family. That happens in most cases. And I don't know about you, Tim. I know Joe is very sensitive. Are you sensitive at all? I mean, you've had UFO encounters, but I don't know if
I've
you're
had
sensitive.
one UFO encounter that I saw, and then I had times when I heard what we thought was the ghost in our house as a kid. But Joe actually saw it, and he saw a couple other things. So I'm gonna let him, and he had a great story of this thing flying over his head. So his are better. So I'm gonna sit back and let you talk to Joe, okay?
Please do share.
Well, anyway, it was a long, long time ago when I was a kid, and we were living in the house on Magnolia, and that's in Seattle. And it's an old house. I think what year was it, Tim? Built 1900s or something like
Probably
that.
the 30s, something like that. I can only guess.
I think it was older. I think it was like
Okay.
1900, something like that. Anyway, one time I was sitting at the front of the TV. We were watching cartoons and stuff like that, or something like that, but my mom was there, and they were just like, all of a sudden, it's like a centerpiece. It was on the mantle. It just kind of lifted up and floated out over the hearth. It's a big mantle and fireplace, and the fire was going, and it just dropped and broke and shattered. And we were just like dumbfounded. I'll never forget that. And my mom, anyway, we knew we had a ghost then. And that was amazing to see that. And then it was really early in the morning one morning, and my dad, I saw him walk into the bathroom, and then there's this shadow figure of a little boy walking right pretty much behind him. Went into there right behind him. So I ran in there looking for that little boy, and there was no one in there. And that just freaked me out.
A shadow figure.
Like a little, it looked like a little boy, pretty much.
Oh, okay.
But
So you
I
saw a full-blown apparition, like it was an
Pretty,
actual.
pretty much. It's like, but you could see through it a little bit, you
Sure,
know, it was see through.
sure.
But that's what I remember. I mean, it was a long time ago, but I remember running in there and being pissed off because who's this kid? You know, I want to be
Right.
with my dad. That's exactly
Aw.
what I remember, you know, at the time. And the other things in the house were, well, I mean, like there were pots and pans and the washer and dryer would go on. Like
Messing with the electronics.
yeah, or just stuff like that. And
The stove would go on. We'd find it on in the morning or something.
Oh,
yeah,
boy.
and so my mom found which records, or what do you call that, Tim? She went downtown or something and found
Yeah,
out.
Historical records.
yeah, to see,
Yes.
because she and a couple other people had played with a Ouija board and found not, and I'm not endorsing that, by the way. I would discourage that, but I was a kid. I had nothing to do with it. She decided to do that, and they found out the name of a little boy who had died there. That's what they determined. So she went down to the city records, and said she located it and found that it was true. So
Mm.
we were just kids, so we just took it for granted that that was the case, and like what we call it again, Joe? Harvey or something like that?
Harvey, I think we called it Harvey,
Yeah.
but it was not that. It was just, there was a name, but I can't remember it. But
Can't remember it either. I
but
think,
he did fall down the cement steps in our back yard. There were cement steps that went down from the yard down to the street, and he fell down them, and they picked him up and they brought him into the house, and he died. Me confirmation of that I saw a little boy, you know. I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure that's the little boy I saw in that house. So that's that house was haunted for sure.
Do you know
And
who owns the house now?
no,
no, but I've gone by the house because I work over there, so
Have you ever
quiet
been
every
tempted
time.
to go and ask? Have you ever
I
been
did.
I
tempted
I
to
did.
go
have
and ask?
visited.
I
I
did.
have.
I go by once in a while. I don't live there, so I go by. If I go to Seattle and I can, I like to go see it because it was fun to live in that neighborhood. And I
Mm.
did walk up and knock on the door one time, and the guy came to the door, and I was a stranger, and I asked him if he ever saw anything strange in the house, told him we lived there as kids, and he wasn't that interested in
Receptive.
talking to me. Yeah. And I would
Mhm.
see why. I probably wouldn't be either if some stranger started asking me questions. So I just said, okay, thank you. And I left. But
Different
we
world we
never
live in.
had anything follow us from there. As soon
Oh,
as we
that's
left,
good.
those experiences stopped. So, and it may have just been because we were little kids and it was a little kid that there was a
And it was
connection.
trying to, yeah, because
Play,
children are
you know,
very receptive to spirit. I was writing the third book and I was getting a pedicure and talking to my daughter about giving her an update because we were getting pedicures together, and the nail technician's sitting there and she's going, "Oh, that's you wrote that book?" And I'm like, yeah. She goes, "Oh my gosh, I have a story to tell you." So she tells me about this house that she and her boyfriend rented, and it's in Lafayette, New Jersey. And she said the whole time that they lived there, it was horrible experience for them. They had emotional issues, mood issues, things were going on in the house, but whatever it was affecting their relationship. And she said, and for all intents and purposes, our relationship was great. We never had any problems until we moved into that house. And then she said, as soon as we left that house, everything was back to normal again with us. She said it was the strangest thing. So I said, oh, there's a story in there. I got to see if I can find out any more else about stories similar from that home. I posted on social media, and this guy reaches out to me, and you could tell he was freaking out. Oh my gosh, I have a story to tell you. And so he pretty much tells me a similar story that she did, that I almost thought, well, is this her boyfriend? And I asked him his name, and he was a totally different guy with a totally different woman. They had two kids that were living there with them. going through the same thing when they lived in that house. It affected their moods and created fights and all this other stuff was going on. So I said, wow, that is crazy. But then I get this message from somebody that saw the post and she said, I lived in that house for 30 years with my husband and 3 children, and we loved the spirits that were in that house. So I thought, wow, this is crazy cool. So she says, yeah, we lived there and we knew the spirits, and the one particular spirit that interacted with us was a woman who lived there in the 1800s, and she was struck by lightning when she was hanging her clothes on a metal line out in the backyard. So she was haunting the house. And she said, and when we were ready to retire and leave the home, we told the spirit, we're really sorry, but we're downsizing and we're moving. And the last day in the home when they were sleeping, she was so upset, the spirit shook their bed. So I guess after that, the new people that they sold the house to were not receptive to ghosts and spirits, and they were in denial. And so I guess that's probably not a good thing to do, be in denial and ignorant, because the spirit was not happy. And the people who bought the house decided to live in a trailer outside on the property and rent the house out. So after that, everybody that they rented it out didn't stay for very long because all this negative stuff started happening. So when they finally decide to sell the house, the realtor does not want anyone to know that it's haunted. And I tried reaching out to her and she wanted nothing to do with me. And she went to the other neighbor across the street and said, don't talk to that lady. I don't want anyone knowing the house is haunted. So she sells the home, because in New Jersey, there's no law that we have to reveal to anybody a house is haunted. She sells the home to a young family, and this woman, you know, she ultimately said to me, she didn't want me to write the story. I said, well, I'm going to write the story. I'm just not going to tell anybody the address of the home, because I'll change the names and everything. But I have the accounts from the people who lived there for 30 years, and I have the accounts of 2 people that live there. And whether you're experiencing something or not, I don't care. Your name's not in the book. But that's how I left off with her. But yeah, I'm really curious to know if they're having issues in their house now that they moved in there.
That's a good story.
Who knows?
Isn't that a good one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and maybe now, because there's a young family in there with children and it's the family unit again, maybe the spirit's going to be happy. But yeah, I'm hoping that they're going to be receptive to her spirit, because if they're not, then the shit's going to hit the fan with them.
There's no doubt.
You know?
Yep. Or maybe it will leave and get out of here and go home or something.
I think she's just kind of, I think because of the tragic death she experienced, she is there. And until somebody has the opportunity to explain that to her, she could leave and she could be reunited with her husband, because this was in the 1800s, you know?
Yeah.
And her family, they kind of get stuck. And I don't like to use that word, but it's kind of what happens if you're able to
hit by lightning, you know, and you're just hanging your clothes, all of a sudden you're dead.
Yeah.
That's terrible. You're probably stuck.
Yeah.
You don't want to go. You don't want to believe you're dead.
Right. And everything changes around you and you're confused. It must be very confusing.
Yeah,
for
it must
sure.
be.
So.
Well, tell them about the one in your house now, Joe.
Oh, you have a haunted house now?
Yeah.
Well, we have like a shadow figure. Well, long story short, when I bought the house, you know, I found out someone killed themselves in the master bedroom. And the guy told me he was an avid bowler, and they put his bowling ball on the corner of the house, and he told me never to move the bowling ball. So I never have, but I've seen his shadow like peek around the corners and stuff like that. And it is very scary to see that, but I'm not scared of it. But I do see him sometimes, but I'm never going to move that bowling ball.
I don't blame you.
What I'm yeah. I think someone kind of moved it when we were painting or something. And then we saw him a couple times. I mean, we were having dinner out in the living room and he's poking around. And anyway, it's scary when you see it. You know, it just happens in a flash and stuff, but I don't go
Yeah.
looking for it. I'm not a ghost hunter. I'm a carpenter, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just telling you. And then my girlfriend says she sees it with the top hat on sometimes. And
Really?
yeah, putting a,
It may not be that guy that committed suicide
it may
in the
not
massive
be,
bedroom.
you know,
She saw it with
she
a
might be
top hat.
yeah, she might be seeing a whole nother thing. And I just thought, I don't want no part of that. You know what I'm saying? I've
Yeah.
been here a long time in this house and I like this house. And like I said, I'm never going to move that bowling ball. But it was scary at first, but I'm not scared of it now, but it is here. So that's the only thing I mean, maybe I've heard like a door slam once in a while, but that's a long time. It hasn't done that in a long, long time.
Hmm.
But
Well,
that's my ghost story here.
as long as you know you can live in peace and harmony with it, I'm sure it's fine, you know. And if it starts to act up, then you can always communicate to it that you know you just want to keep the house really nice
Oh yeah,
in their
I think
space.
I think I've done that one time before. Say, hey man, it's all good. Let's keep it that way. You know.
Yeah.
I think I had a little
Yeah.
couple words with it. So
Yeah, no,
I
that's
think,
good that then they know you don't mean to take their space or harm them in any way, and you're acknowledging them. That's very helpful. So,
yeah,
and if
yeah.
if it was an angry spirit, if he was a mean spirit, you would have known it already, believe me.
I think so. Yeah, no doubt. Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
that's my
guys,
ghost.
this was so much fun. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I loved hearing about your book, Tomato Fields. And
Yeah,
we
that's a
will
I'll
good book.
send you the link. I'll send you the link.
yes,
Okay.
I'll put the link in the footage of the blurb on the show. But I really appreciate you sharing your time with me today, guys.
Well, thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
And
And if you all out there listeners liked this week's episode and you're all into the paranormal, check out my other show, Eleanor Wagner's Creepin' It Real podcast out of the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, which is available wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're interested in reading any of my books, you can find the links to them on my website, authoreleanorwagner.com. I write about the history of the town and location, add the paranormal story to the mix, and finish it all off with photos and evidence. Everybody loves a good ghost story, but there's nothing better than a true ghost story. So check it out, authoreleanor.com. Thank you, guys.
All right.
thank
Thank you.
you. We'll see you.